Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk some My Hero Academia. This time, specifically, let's talk about the differences between episode 57 or episode 19 of the third season of Hero Academia anime compared to the chapter that they were based on. What were the differences between anime and manga? This time, this episode covers the materials from chapter 109 and 110. Overall, there are quite a few small differences that add up over time, but at this point we've gotten to a stage where we're just kind of nitpicking differences. The differences are largely cosmetic and don't really go towards anything that's really substantial as opposed to when we first started off the season. That said, this episode is probably a better adaptation or just an overall better experience than the manga chapters they were based on, and that has a large part to do with the fact that the manga chapters for this period had a lot of blank spaces. A lot of time there was a lot of dialogue in the panels, and the panels just white or black backgrounds. There wasn't a lot of art put in. That's not to say something bad about the manga. It's tough to make a manga under really tough deadlines, but because of that failing, the anime ends up being a bit more of a rewarding experience. So enough of the overview, let's just get right into it. I'll just be listing off the differences as they arise. So firstly, the HUC or the Huck, they got a better introduction shot than what happened in the manga, and this may just be because their overall introduction was kind of removed in the previous episode. In fact, the pose that they have here is kind of reminiscent of the pose that they had in the previous chapters. The one to look at for the similarities is the guy with the crazy finger action. Anyway, moving on from there, we had a small scene of Class 1A getting dialogue instead of a bunch of no-names. And it's actually interesting, this was not the only time that this happened throughout the chapter. But anyway, it was specifically for the dialogue where people were talking about there being a variety of jobs available in the Hero Academia world. Initially, that was done by no-names in the manga. It was here instead done by Suyu and Ojiro. Anyway, moving on to around the 4-minute mark of the episode. In the manga for this part, we originally got a static shot, which is what I was talking about in the beginning. There were a lot of bits where it was a lot of dialogue for only one panel of action. Here we got to see more of the characters who are sort of important, the big standouts being Shindo's group. These guys get way more screen time in the anime than they do in the manga, and this episode made that really clear that they're trying to boost these guys' screen time in general. Moving on to another thing that was expanded a little bit, the thing with Kami got a bit more expanded in the anime. The scenes that we see below did not really occur in the manga, specifically that second wave, that also didn't happen in the manga. So this is an example of a funny bit getting expanded. Later on, once the exam starts, we get a few more scenes of the kids talking as they're running, and this was really good. Again, it was another one of the scenes where it was giving lines to characters who otherwise didn't really get to talk here. There were also wider shots just to show that the majority of the class was here, as opposed to the manga where it was really hard to tell who was present at that situation. Another thing to note was that the whole Bakugo scene with him getting followed by the no-names, or by the extras as he calls them, that wasn't in the manga. We move on, and again we have no-names being deprived of their valuable screen time. Shindo's group ended up doing what a bunch of no-names did in the manga chapter. Another example of the anime just saying like, okay, you know, these guys have names, these guys are more important, let's just use them instead of these no-names. Although the episode itself still had a lot of no-names doing things, but it was mostly when it was things revolving around quirks. Because quirks were involved, it's hard to have Shindo's group doing it, but something as generic as setting up a flag, Shindo can do that. Making our way through the episode, we're now hitting those Ochako bits of the episode, and let's just say, like, let's face it, if you're an Izuku Ochako shipper, this episode was pretty great for you. And the anime also went out of its way, and it kind of looks a bit prettier. I think Ochako ultimately looks better in the anime than she did in the manga. One thing that did change with the scene though was that Toga was seen. In the manga we just saw the text bubble, the anime went a step further and just made the whole flashback. Now again, I'm not going to fault the manga for this. The author's already under a time crunch. He doesn't need to redraw or repaste the Toga scenes. The anime can do that, but it ultimately makes for a bit more of a solid experience with the anime. Moving on, and we're squarely in the chapter 110 material, and there is a lot more blank spaces in chapter 110 than there were in chapter 109, or at least it felt that way. We go in with Meatball Man talking with its teacher about stain. In the manga there was just a white and a gradient on the panel. Here we at least got to see Stain's face. Again, this was another one of those examples of filling a blank panel with more detail, and it continued later on when we had Ochako and the rest going to save a man, and the man giving a long-winded speech. In the manga, again, it was just blank panels of dialogue. Here we at least got to see Shindo's glorious face again. As we're winding down towards the end of the episode though, we start getting a bit more expansion. In the anime, we ended up getting the whole split up scene expanded upon, whereas in the manga, we just kind of moved into the Aoyama scene right after Shoji suggested splitting off into the groups. The anime does way better in this regard. We get to see what the kids are doing, we get to see more from the kids, we get to see them actually doing stuff. It's undoubtedly an improvement. That said, this stuff doesn't ultimately matter in the long run, but if you're a fan of any of the little characters in Class 1A, this is gonna feel pretty good to at least see it. It like at least reminds you that they are out there doing stuff. We then later go into another round of expansion, and we started it off with a really epic shot of Shoji using his quirk. That's a lot of ears. It really makes you wonder how exactly Bakugo got kidnapped when this guy could produce that many extremities. But you know what, this isn't the place to question that. That said, it was a pretty cool shot of his capabilities at this stage, even though we never really got that in the manga. So this is a case of like, well, we don't really know if the author thinks Shoji can do this, but it's still a really cool shot to see. This is pretty amazing. But along with that, we got more expansion, and it was kind of centered around Ida for this little bit. We had him calling back to his older character of him being the kind of guy that would change his behavior according to testing conditions instead of just being someone who would help everyone in need. So this was pretty good. It wasn't in the manga, it was just a nice reminder of who Ida is. I appreciated it. This scene was also like the scene that was coupled with the kids doing stuff like Suyu and Todoroki and I believe Hagakure helping out someone that was in danger of drowning. This didn't happen in the manga. It was pretty cool to see it here. Overall, this whole little bit here makes up for the biggest expansion that the anime did for these two chapters, and it's ultimately, I think, welcome. I think it's a very nice thing that we got with these last little bits. And with that, that's pretty much the differences between chapters 109, 110, and episode 57 of the Hero Academia anime. That's pretty much it. Overall, they were very small changes, but when it comes to being a fan of the characters, the anime episode, without a doubt, is the stronger experience. Unless, of course, you like the brevity of the manga, in which case, you know, just read the manga if you don't have time. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Those are the differences. I hope you enjoy. And also, hey, here is the sketch that the author did for this episode, Toga and Ochako. Now, there is a little bit of a trick going on with why this is relevant right now. But hey, in the episode you saw that Ochako was having the Toga flashbacks. Toga is making a big impression on Ochako. So the way that the author drew this here, it's actually it captured the situation pretty well. Toga's thoughts have been invading Ochako, and she continues to plague Ochako even now. I can't wait for you guys to see the ending of this arc. Anyway, guys, till next time, I hope you have a great day.